Hey everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sublimation graphics and tutorials here on Facebook. If you're catching us on YouTube, please be sure to come join our Facebook group where all of our videos air live before they're added to our YouTube channel unedited. And of course, if you're catching us live on Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Those links are in the video description depending on where you're watching. Today's tutorial, just in time for the upcoming fall season, is going to be on how to create a doodle pumpkin design that will be perfect for laser cut door hangers as a standalone, or you can add it with a background to round door hangers or garden flags, pillows, really anything that you want. After we finish creating it, I will touch on some different ways that you can use your creation. But the first part will, of course, be just walking you through how to make one of these quick and easy painted style door hanger designs. These are truly all the rage. That doodle vibe is so popular. It has been popular for the last almost 3 years now, and it's really not going anywhere. It's just one of those styles that always looks great and can be implemented in so many different ways. And the most common is in door hangers that we see cut out. So we're going to go ahead and cover that. But before we do, we are working in Affinity Designer on a Windows computer. Always keep in mind that if you're using the Mac version or iPad version, some of your layout might look a little bit different. And even a handful of options are not available on the Mac, I've learned, like the ability to right click and duplicate. So if you ever find like something that doesn't quite line up with our Windows videos, you can always select any of your menu tabs up here, and you can see the short codes next to the different actions. So that should help you if you're using a Mac. I haven't really adjusted that before, but I did want to make sure I addressed it this time around. Also, if you enjoy this video and my style of teaching and you want to learn everything there is to know about Affinity Designer and become super confident in your graphic design skills, then be sure to sign up for the Affinity Designer Digital Graphic Design Masterclass for Sublimation. This is over 100 hours of video lessons and design challenges, chances to win prizes, and you get a fun certificate at the end. It is a learn at your own pace, at your own time type of course. It's all on your own schedule, so you don't have to feel pressured, but we look forward to seeing everything that you create if you do choose to take it, and share that in our group. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by just opening up our document. So we'll go to File and then New. And you can choose to set this in whatever the size that you want. Because this is going to be sort of square, sort of rectangle, I'm going to just choose my standard rectangle size, which happens to be 5,000 pixels by 7,000 pixels. Always make sure that your DPI is set to a minimum of 300. And make sure that your color format, if you're designing for sublimation, is set to RGB/8 with your color profile sRGB IEC followed by these numbers. You can choose to check or uncheck transparent background. That's completely up to you. If you happen to be printing for other types, or if you happen to be designing for other types of printing, then you will want to use the CMYK format. And if you want to learn more about how to understand color formats, color profiles, ICC profiles, and why sublimation is the exception to the rule, be sure to join the masterclass because we talk about all of that in depth. So once you get your document settings together, you can go ahead and hit create. And we have our first workspace. We're going to go ahead and start by just creating our pumpkin shape. We can do this with either the ellipse tool or the rounded rectangle tool. For this one, I'm going to use the ellipse tool because I think it'll look better. So I'll select my ellipse tool, and then you can either choose to set your color through your context tool panel or through your color panel over on the side. I want sort of an orangey interior. And I'm going to add a black stroke. Next, we'll just click and drag on our canvas. Basically, you're just trying to get one that seems like a good right side or left side to your pumpkin. And then what you can do is right click and duplicate, or hit Control J or Command J on your keyboard. And then just click and drag that one over and get it lined up with your first pumpkin or first oval that you had created. If you don't see the red and green lines, those are your snapping guides. You can turn them on by making sure that this magnet at the top is pressed down. That will activate them. So then you'll see them and you can see that our pumpkins are side by side and the top and the bottom are lined up together, which is what we want. We're going to duplicate this one more time. So we will right click and duplicate, or again, use Control or Command J. And this time we want our last one to be in the middle of, basically overlapping in the middle of our other two sides. So just like that, we have our general pumpkin shape. And if you wanted to modify this more, you could sort of move or resize, I guess I should say, the two that are in the back, and that kind of gives it this little bit more rounded look. Now I'm just going to click and drag and select all of these so I can center them on my page and move them down a little bit because we will be adding some other stuff to our workspace. Now we want to adjust our stroke on all of our ellipses to something that looks a bit more doodle-like. Now by default, it's going to have the straight stroke. If you click on stroke panel, you see you have the solid line style, dash line style, or textured line style. Now my favorite to use for this type of project is to select the texture line style and select your shape first, then select your textured line style. And I always then click over to brushes, and you can choose from any of the brushes that already come with Affinity Designer, or if you happen to have purchased some other brushes, you can select those as well. The inks one that comes with it is a good choice because it does give it that drawn look. So you can play around and decide if any of those fit the look that you're going for. It's not so much about it looking like a perfect line. It's supposed to have that hand-drawn effect to it. So one of my favorites to use, two favorites I should say, is the Frankentoon comic book inks. I actually use these a lot because I really just love the look that they give that has a very hand-drawn look to it. Or I also really like these tattoo art brushes from the Artifacts Forge. He has tons of great brushes on his website. He also sells on Creative Market and Design Cuts. And he's got some on the Affinity Designer website as well. And I'm sure other places, but I have linked that in the video description as well. So this is one of my favorite sets. And I love it because it does give this like fun, like doodle like outline to it. And this is great, especially when we're going for that look that looks like something that was painted. And that's kind of like the look that we're going for with this little project. So I went ahead and selected that one, this second one that we have here, Tattoo Art -2. Now, the last thing I want to do onto each one of these is I want to add an outline. So I'm going to click on my effects panel and I'm going to select outline. I'm going to select my color and I'm going to change the color to be the color of my pumpkin. So once you just click and drag that dropper over, you'll see the circle will fill up. Click that and it will apply it to your color. And then just extend the radius. And you can go, as far as you want. I don't want mine to be too much. I just want it to be just enough to really help bring out the stroke line that I created. Now, if I wanted to make my black stroke line there a little bit thicker, you can do that under the stroke panel and just by adjusting this width slider. I'm going to repeat this on my other two ellipses. So I'll go ahead and select that one that's on top. I'm going to select the textured line style underneath my stroke panel. I'm going to click over to brushes And you don't have to do the same brush on each one. Add a little texture by choosing a different one. I'll adjust my stroke width. And then I'm going to go ahead and add an outline by selecting the effects panel, selecting outline, clicking on the color box, selecting that dropper, clicking and dragging it to pick up my orange color, clicking on the circle to fill that color, and then expanding the radius. And you can see it on the top and the edges there. Now this one that's on the top, you might not get as noticeable. You could always choose to do the one on the top in more of a fine line, thin stroke in terms for your stroke line as well. I'm just going to adjust it to how I might like it. And then once again, we'll repeat that for our last layer. I've selected it in my layers panel. You can also just select it on your screen. Click on my stroke panel, select textured line style, the little paintbrush, select brushes, and choose the stroke that you would like. I'm going to use the same stroke that I used on the other side because I do like that one. Click on stroke if you would like to adjust the width. And if you want to make sure all of your widths are the same, you can just click on that first one that we did. It says 15.7 points is our width. So if we click on this one, we're only at 12.4, so we can actually just hit 15.7, and that will ensure that our stroke is the same. And we can do the same thing for our outline. Click on our first one, go to effects, and look at the radius of our outline, 51.3 pixels, and we'll click on that one that we actually need to still add our outline to. Check outline, check the color box, drag that dropper over to the color, hit the circle to fill our outline, and then we will change this to that 51.3. I'm just going to double check that. I'm going to click back on this one. Okay, yes, it's 51.3. So now we have our equal strokes. So this is our base layer of our pumpkin, and everything else that we're going to do, we're just going to add, in terms of the pumpkin, we'll add some shading right on this. So now what we want to do is we want to add sort of like a internal shadow line. So what we can do is you can either use your pen tool and just create an ellipse, but it's honestly easier just to click on that ellipse tool again and start it just inside here, and then click and drag down and expand it until it meets in the center of this ellipse that we made. Now, we're not going to repeat the same process that we just did. Instead, what we want to do is click on our color panel. We want to remove the fill. On our stroke, the open circle, we're going to click and drag to select that orange that we have for our pumpkin. So there's our orange. And now we actually want our stroke to be a little bit darker. So what we'll do is we'll drag this towards the black to give us a darker shade. We don't want to go too far, and we don't want to get too far away from the orange either. So if it does seem like we're going a little far from the orange, what we'll do is we'll just slide this on the outside circle like that and get a nice stroke color. If I click off, you can see a little bit better. We're going to go to our brushes, or sorry, our stroke panel again, and we are going to expand this quite a bit. And then we're going to click on textured line style and select brushes, and we're going to choose another brush. Now for this layer, I want to do something that looks a bit more solid and paint-like. So let's see what happens, what we got under our acrylic brushes. Not quite what I'm going for. Okay, I think that this one will work, but what we're going to do is we're going to flip it so that our stroke starts at the other end. So we'll just flip vertical, and now that stroke is down there. We can make this a little bit wider, And then we just want to extend our inner circle here so that it's closer to our edges. And then if we just slide it, we'll see that it shows us it's in the center when we get the red and green axis points. This is still a little bit darker than I would like. So instead of trying to adjust it on our color slider, which can be a little difficult when you're just trying to take it down just a slight amount, what we'll do instead is we'll click on our opacity with that layer selected and we'll bring it down to about 70%. Now that looks more like the shade that I want to go for in here. We're going to do the same thing for our back 2 layers now. If you find it hard to work with your top layer, what you can do is just click and drag to select that top layer and the ellipse. And what you can just uncheck them and then you won't be able to see them. So this will make it a little easier when you're trying to work with these back layers. So we'll click on our ellipse tool again, and we're going to repeat that same process. Now our stroke is going to stay filled to the same color because we didn't do any other stroke adjustments. So it's just going to repeat what we had already set. So that makes it a little easier to get everything lined up. And again, we're going out towards the edges here. We don't want it all the way touching the black. We just want it close to the black. And then you can click on that stroke panel and choose textured line style and then select brushes and choose one of these brush strokes that's available. Once again, I do kind of like the open part more at the bottom, so I'm going to select that and I'm going to just flip vertical like that. And we will make the same adjustment that we did on our other one. We will select our opacity slider and bring that down. We did that right about to 70%, I think. Let's see. Yeah, 69%. 70%. So we'll go ahead and adjust that. And then you can choose to adjust the stroke more if you would like to do that as well. Now, because our bottom 2 layers are the same, we can actually just duplicate this and move it over unless you wanted to choose a different brush stroke style. I'm going to right click on that layer then and select duplicate. And I'm going to move it over. Now, by default, it's at the top. See how we see it at the top? It's overlapping this other layer, which is not what we want. So we're actually just going to, you can select this move back one option or you can drag it down. So if you select the move back, you can just watch it on your screen until you see it go behind. See, now it's behind that one layer. So this is our bottom most ellipse with its additional stroke. And then there's our second one with its additional stroke here, so we can just grab that down. Oops. I accidentally clipped it instead of bringing it down. There we go. So now our back layers and strokes are together here, and our front layers are at the top. Of course, we still have those hidden. We don't have to make any additional adjustments to this because we did just duplicate the one that we had already made. So now we'll check those 2 layers from the top there so that we can see them again. The next thing that we want to do is we want to add a white, like a thin white stroke over top of this darker orange that we've added. And this is just going to have like some squiggles in it to really bring in all of that painted look. Again, we are doing this Doodle painted style graphic in Affinity Designer. It's very popular in designs today, and it's also really popular for door hangers. So if you happen to have a Glowforge or know someone with a Glowforge, you can create this and then have them cut the template, and you'll be able to sublimate on the Sublimation MDF and create cool door hangers with a design that you created. So what I want to do is I want to start with the back 2 because it'll just be easier. So I'm going to once again click and drag to select those middle layers and make sure that you're not selecting the back layers there. So your boundary box is this blue lines around it. It shows that we've just selected those 2, And what we can just do is uncheck those again so that we can just focus on these other two layers. And you can even go so far as to click and drag these two and uncheck them so that you have just this one layer to work on at a time. It's totally up to you. We're going to be using our pencil tool, which I don't think I've actually shown you in any video so far, unless you're in the masterclass, of course. So if we select our pencil tool, you want to make sure that you have this window mode. You want to make sure you have stabilizer checked and select the window mode one, this one that looks like a circle. We're going to set our stroke. It's defaulted to white, and that's what color we're going to want as well. I mean, you can do whatever color you want, but I'm going to do it in white. And don't worry if your stroke is too thick. I'm going to put it, I think 6 points is probably fine. We'll see. But if the nice part about vector graphic design, which is the foundation of Affinity Designer, is that if your stroke is too thick, or if you need to fix an area that's a little too, wobbly or not smooth enough, you can do that all afterwards. This is one of the big differences between vector artwork and raster editing artwork. Raster editing artwork is what you do in Procreate and in Photoshop and in the pixel persona of Affinity Designer and in Affinity Photo. And all of those, basically, like, once you do it, that's it, it's done. If you want to change it, you have to delete it and start all over again. You can't easily manipulate it. And that's one of the reasons why I love vector artwork and I love Affinity Designer. So we got our pencil tool selected, and we're just going to go ahead and start. Now you're going to see that as we're about to do this, there's going to be like a little swimmer looking guy. So I'm going to start at the bottom and see we've got that little swimmer guy. We're just going to drag him along inside of that orange like he's swimming in a canal. And I'm going to do it somewhere near the bottom here. I'm just going to swim him back and forth across to give that doodle paint look. Now my goal is, of course, to keep him in the middle, but I do want this to look also like it's been, that hand painted look again. So it's okay if it's not perfect. And again, we can adjust the lines afterwards. Now, because we have that middle layer overlapping, we don't really have to worry too much about doing this backspace that I'm going through right now. But we are going to want to make sure that we connect it back at the beginning when we're done. So if I just select my move tool here so we can see this, we have a good look at what our stroke looks like. Again, you can modify this stroke by selecting the textured line style and choosing the brush of your choice. You can increase the thickness by simply sliding that slider. And if I zoom in so we can see a little bit better, we can select our node tool, which is this one that looks like a cursor. And then we can clean up some of these lines. So like, I don't really like this dip right here. I'm going to just select that node and I can click and drag it out to where I would like it. You can also just move it with your cursor. With your arrow keys and get it where you would like. So if I click off, I can see that that's much better. And if I wanted to adjust some of these, maybe I want to bring this guy in a little bit more and move this one out and bring this one down. Probably bring these three down a little bit. So for that, I'm going to click and drag to select all three of those nodes, and that way I can just adjust them all together. I do want to just fix this right here. All right, I think that will work. Let me zoom out and see how I feel about it. I like it. I like it. Now I want to click and drag all of these layers. No, sorry. We're going to do that in just a second. The last thing that I want to do is I want to add just some little orange ellipses on here to sort of give this a texture. So we're going to be using that same orange that we did as this stroke. We will select our ellipse tool. We'll go over to color. We do not want a stroke, so we'll hit no stroke. We'll select our filled circle and we'll click and drag this over to our orange just to make sure we got this correctly. And then I'm just gonna basically make them like little ovals. I'm just trying to give some texture. That's all I'm doing here. So I want to keep it focused up here or down here. And you can right click and duplicate one if you get it where you want it, and then you can just shrink it down. I'll zoom in so that's a little easier for you guys to see. Or you, of course, can just keep drawing them in there. There's literally no right or wrong way to do this. Okay, so we just want a little bit. You don't really need a lot. It's just to help give our pumpkin a little bit more dimension, and you can always go back and add more after you start filling things out if you think it needs a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is click and drag all of this that's together, and it's only going to select what we have visible. So the check boxes are visible, these ones are invisible. So click and drag across your workspace to select all of those layers, and then right click and group. And now we've created one group of this layer, and we can click on it to rename it, and we'll call this one left bottom pumpkin. Now I'm going to select my right bottom pieces, and we'll just check the little boxes so that we can see them. And we're going to do this same step again. We're going to add that white stroke. This time I'm going to make my little squiggly line more up towards the top here. And I'll add these little, our little textured bubble things down here. So let's go ahead and grab that pencil tool again. Once again, you want to make sure you have stabilizer checked and select window mode. It's going to help you get that smooth, slow as you're moving around, especially when you're using a computer mouse. This just helps you get a little bit more comfortable with it. You can adjust your width. Somehow I switched this to black when I want white, so we'll go to white. And I do want to make sure there's no fill. All right, so now we're going to start this again, and you can really go either direction that you would like to go. Keep in mind that this section is going to be covered by that middle piece, so it's not that important to get that section perfect. So I'll start over here. And I'm just trying to make my little guy swim through my orange channel. And then once again, I'm going to just kind of bring him back and forth to help give that doodly look here. And all the way down, he's going to swim back to his start point. He really does look like a little person who's swimming. Okay, so when we finish, you can see that we've got our nodes all highlighted, and we can click on that node tool. And now we can make some modifications. So I know that I want to fix these ones right here. I'm going to just click and drag to select both of them so I can move them together. There we go. And then when I click off, I can kind of see what's going on here. And we'll bring this one in just a little bit. Again, if you can move it with your arrow keys, or you can click and drag it with your mouse. Okay, I think that's great. So let's go ahead and add this fun little texture. I'm going to add it down here in the bottom. See, we're kind of doing it diagonal from each other. So I will select my ellipse tool again. I will select no stroke. So hit that little no, the circle with the red through it. So no stroke on our open stroke is on top. Select our filled circle, make sure that one's on top. Select our orange color. And now I'll go ahead and do the same thing over here. And this is just to create like a cute little textured appearance. So again, it really doesn't matter how many you do. We're going to click and drag to group all of this layer together now as well. So click and drag across your whole screen, right click, group, and then we will rename this one Bright Bottom Pumpkin. Now it's time to just repeat that process on our top layer. Except on our top layer, we're not going to add these little extra textured pieces. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but I'm not going to for the purpose of this. For my top layer, I'm going to add my little squiggles over here and over here, or you could do them down here and up here. You might just have to play around with it and see how you feel about it as you draw that little squiggly line. So we will select our pencil tool once again. I'm just going to reiterate, make sure stabilizer is checked and choose the window mode, the one with the circle with the line. We do not want to fill, so no fill. We'll select our stroke again and set that to white. And now we'll just click and drag along here. The nice part about using the stabilizer is it helps you have more control when you're using a computer mouse. This is obviously going to be different if you happen to be using a tablet with a graphics pencil, especially if you're using the Apple Pencil. So I'm going to just wiggle back and forth here. He really does look like he's swimming. And we want to connect right back to where we started. Okay. Now, once again, if you want to make some adjustments to your line, you can do that. I kind of want to smooth out this spot right here. So I'll click on that node tool and I will just drag that node out, maybe down a little bit. There we go. That smoothed that right out. And this is a little sharp over here. So let's grab that one there. And we'll move him down and over. Yeah. We've got that all smoothed out. And if you wanted to add a textured brush stroke, again, choose that textured line style. Click on your brushes, select any of the ones that Affinity comes with already or ones that you may have downloaded. I have downloaded quite a few. I always post them in the group. Most of them have come from the Affinity Designer website. I either take advantage of the Affinity Designer website when they have sales, like the one that just ended, or I get them from creativemarket.com. That's one of my other favorite resources for finding fun brushes and things like that. So anytime you look for brushes, you always want to make sure that they say that they are vector brushes because Affinity Designer is a vector program. Roster brushes, if we click on Pixel Persona, roster brushes will show up in your pixel persona and you can see here, there's a way different options than I have in the designer persona, different brushes for different interfaces. So I've got that base of our pumpkin and I'm going to click and drag to select everything that's in the middle. Be sure you don't select too far out that you end up selecting one of your bottom pieces. Right click and group, and we will do center pumpkin. So we've got those 3 layers all together, and you can leave them like this, or you can click and drag and select all of them and group it so you can just call it pumpkin by itself. We'll go ahead and add in our stem now. We're going to click on our bottom shape tool and select that little tiny arrow or corner that's white, and it'll open up all of these different shapes that are preset in Affinity Designer. We're going to use the trapezoid tool. To me, that's the one that looks most like a stem, so it'll be perfect for this. We currently have it set to that white stroke because that is what we had used So we will change our stroke to black because we're going to be doing a similar effect to what we did on our pumpkin. And we'll click on our fill and we will make this more of a brown. And again, you can always adjust this afterwards if it's not quite the shade you were going for. Okay, so you just click and drag to create your trapezoid. And we want to flip this using our rotation tools at the top. So we'll hit flip vertical so that the wider part is at the top and the narrow part is at the bottom. Next, we're going to click on convert to curves. And this is going to transform our shape into a curve so that we can use our node tool to make adjustments. So if we click on our node tool, we can now basically just modify this into looking more like a pumpkin stem that's less rigid. So I am going to bring this one down just a little bit. I'm going to dome my top by just grabbing that line and dragging it. And of course, you can also use your control arms. I'm going to select this node and sort of bubble it out there, but I'm going to bring it in down here. And then for this one, I think I'll bring it in. I think I'll just drag this node out so it's got a little bit thicker of a base. So again, you can click on those lines and drag it, or you can use your control arms to be able to modify it. And then you can click off just to see if you like how it is or if you want to make some additional changes. So click back on my move tool, and as I already mentioned, we're going to do that similar that we did here on our pumpkin where we added the outline and we had the black stroke. So we already have a black stroke. It's a little hard to see, but we can make it thicker by increasing our stroke line. And we can click on that textured line style underneath our stroke panel and select brushes and then choose one of the brushes that's in here. I think I am going to use one of these straight ones from this Tattoo Art Brushes. Once again, these are from the Artifacts Forge. It's one of my favorite brush sets. I use it a lot. It's so handy. Anytime you're looking to give that hand-drawn or that like doodle effect to something, whether it's text or something like this that you're creating, it's great. It's it's such a simple brush set, but it's hands down one of my favorites. So with that selected, we're going to go to Effects and we'll select checkbox our outline. We'll select our color block, grab our color dropper into our stem, and then click the circle to fill that into our stroke, and then increase the radius outside of it, just like we did with each of these layers of our pumpkin. Now we can add another stroke in here, but unlike how we did it with the pumpkin, we can just make our stroke, or I'm sorry, similar to the way we did it with the pumpkin with this darker orange, but we're going to do lighter in our stem. However, we don't need to go all the way around like we did in our pumpkin sections. We can just go across this top and side or the bottom and this other side, totally your discretion. You can actually do both and just do them as two separate lines. So I'm going to click on my pen tool for this one. It's currently set to the fill that we already used, and I do want to go lighter. So I'm just going to drag this towards the lightness. Okay. And when you're using the pen tool, it's really just more about clicking and then adjusting afterwards. So I'm going to start in my corner. I'm going to do one click on either end, and then I'm going to do one click down here. Oops, we have I did our fill. So we need to swap this. We'll hit that swap arrow. So now our light brown is the stroke and our black is the fill, which we don't need. So we'll just hit that no fill option. And then we have just our stroke, and we can click on the stroke panel and expand the width to adjust that. So now we'll click on our node tool and we will just adjust these lines. You can click and drag on the line to be able to adjust it, or you can use these control arms that you get. So I can sort of bring that one in, use this one to bring it out. As you drag it upwards, you see that it expands that curve. And so I'm bringing that one downwards, it's expanding this curve in this direction. And then when we click off, we can see if we're happy with it or not. We can move this one down a little bit. And we can even enhance the stroke. Now, because we're only doing this line, we don't really have to add anything else, but if we wanted to, we could put a white line right here. So this time around, instead of using the pencil and getting the squiggles, which we don't really need, we can just use our pen tool. And I'm going to use my pen tool with line mode selected, and I'm going to make my stroke white. And when you have line mode selected, basically every 2 dots that you make is going to create one separate line. So I can do that line here and select my node tool, sort of bring it in a little bit, decrease the stroke so it's nice and thin. And then if I wanted to just sort of have like a hash line over that, or a hash line over our light brown, I can just click, and each set of 2 is going to create its own stroke. This is when you use the line mode. So moving this guy up, and I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to right click and duplicate, and I'm also going to add this down here. We'll see how I feel about it. I don't really like these ones for the brown, so I think I'll actually add 2 over here. And yeah, that works out fine for our stem. So just like we did with each of our bottom sections, we're going to click and drag all of those pieces together. Actually, sorry, I just decided I wanted to click and drag all those white ones first and make the stroke a little bit thinner. There we go. I like that better. Now we'll click and drag and select all of our pieces of our stem, right click, group, click on the name, type in stem, and we want this to be behind our pumpkin. So with that selected, we can just drag it down by the icon below all the other layers, and it's behind. And then we can, of course, move it up and down as we see fit. If we click and drag everything here, we can move it a little further down on our page, and then we have room to adjust this. Now, the last thing I want to do is just add a cute little leaf on my pumpkin, and then it will be ready to be personalized. We can add a little board on it. You can just put the initials in the middle. I'll show you a few different options. So let's just go ahead and start with our So our leaf part is going to be a little bit more abstract. We will just go ahead and start with our pen tool to make it easy. We want to make sure we have smart mode selected this time around. And we're going to set our stroke to black, just like we did with our stem and our pumpkin. And we'll set our fill to whatever shade of green you might want to use. I wouldn't go too dark, because these doodly pumpkins are kind of designed to be playful and fun, and sometimes bright. I guess it depends on what you are creating. So we're basically going to click around just like I mentioned before when we did this stroke. Using the pen tool really is just clicking around and then adjusting a line. So we're just going to sort of click in a fashion of if there were leaves. Or I guess stems of a leaf, branches of a leaf. So as you can see, we just kind of get like a loose idea here, and we'll go ahead and now edit this with our node tool. I'm going to bring this one out, this one up a little bit more. I'm going to grab a hold of my line and my lines on all of these and give them a little bit more curve. so they can play into that doodly leaf look. And when we click off, I think we just need to bring that one out. Zoom in so it'll be a little easier to see. Oh, I see. Our node is overlapping. So we'll just turn our handles to fix that overlap. And I'm just going to drag this one down. All I'm doing is just adjusting my nodes. All right, I think that will work. Okay, so we'll click back on our move tool. And again, you can keep adjusting until you're perfectly happy with your pumpkin leaf. We're going to click back on our move tool, and I'm going to select that textured line style again because I want to give my stroke sort of that doodle effect. I'll click on brushes, and you can choose any brush stroke that you want. I have mentioned already that I do really love this tattoo art brushes. Let's see. Okay, that one might work. I do like the ones that sort of taper. All right, I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to click on my stroke panel, and underneath that width bar slider, just adjust it down a little bit so it's not overwhelming. Then I'm going to click on effects, and I'm going to add that outline once again. So I'll checkbox outline. I'll click on the black box that's here, grab my color dropper, pick up that color of our leaf, click the circle to fill the dropper, and then slide our radius slider to add that external outline, like so. Now with this one, we're going to do a fill area in a different shade, that sort of like we did here with the lighter brown and here with the darker orange. But for this one, what we want to do is take this curve. We're going to right click and duplicate. We're going to remove the stroke. So underneath our stroke panel, we're going to select no line style. Underneath the effects panel, we're going to remove the outline. Underneath the color panel, we'll remove that stroke color and we'll select our fill. And we want this one to be lighter. So I'm going to drag this towards the lightness. Not too far, just like we did with the brown and the orange. We want them to contrast or be, we want them to not be the same color, but we don't want it to be too dramatic. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the contour tool, and I'm going to just drag this, just click and drag so we're filled in until we fill in that space. And you can choose to, oops, if we select that again, you can modify that however much you need. Again, you just click on it with the contour tool and drag out, drag in, and it will basically create like an inset or an offset for it. That was pretty easy, right? You can choose to still add a white line in here if you want to. An easy thing to do is to just duplicate this again. So we're selecting that internal light green area. We're going to right click and duplicate, but this time around we're going to do no fill, and we're going to click on our open circle for our stroke, and we will add white. We're going to click on our stroke panel and decrease that stroke. We can use that textured line style and select, one of these brushes if we want. And again, we want that nice and thin. So you can leave that right on the edge, and then you can add the little hash lines like we did on the stem. That's a great way to just bring this together. We also need a line up through the middle. So let's grab our pen tool for all of that. We'll grab our pen tool and we're going to click on that line mode again. And we will click and go up, select our node tool, click and drag that line to give it a little curvature. We can adjust the stroke just a hair. All right. And our next line we want to be black. So I'll click this and click my stroke box and put it on black, and pen tool again. And I'm just going to do this one right next to it. I'm going to click on that node tool and click and drag that line. And this one we will make thicker. Now we don't want it to completely cover our white. So what we're going to do in our layers panel is just drag that below the white one. Now you want to make sure you get that full, that transparent rectangle that we see. You want to get that full all the way across. This lets you know that you're moving the layer below the layer. If you have 3/4 of a rectangle like this, you're going to clip it inside, which is not what you want. You want it all the way down below, just like that. Full rectangle is what you should see. Okay, and now we'll just add a couple little hash lines. So let's grab our pen tool one more time, making sure we have that line mode selected. This stroke is going to be white. And then you can just add them in there. Now the stroke on both of these seems too thick, so I'm just going to click and drag to select them both, and I will decrease that stroke line. There we go. And we'll do another one over here. And we could probably do one right here, sort of at an angle. Okay. So I'm going to zoom out a little too far. We want to click and drag to select all the components of our leaf that are currently all separated. So we will click and drag to select all of those, and we will right click and group, and then click on the word group, and we will give it a name. Now you can move this wherever you would like. If you just wanted to have it sort of sitting on top, you could place it like that. If you wanted it behind your stem and the rest of your pumpkin, you can drag it down and stick it in the back like that. I want mine to be in front of the stem, but behind my front center here. So I'm going to click and drag it so that it's right below the center pumpkin layer. So that's this layer when we click on it. And then I can just bring it down and fit it in there like so. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. And there we have our doodle pumpkin. Pretty easy, right? So now what can we do with this? I mean, if you happen to have made a door hanger, or you wanted to use this to cut a door hanger that you can then sublimate, you could easily add simple words on this with, I would say, some sort of a doodle-like text. So if we click on our text tool, and then, actually this ZP Doohickey one is probably a good one, or this Jack and the Beanstalk. Let's see how this one looks. So we'll click and drag to start being able to add text. Not the worst font, but not the one I would want to choose, I don't think. Let's try that other one. Okay, this font is actually pretty perfect for doodle text. And you can add a pattern fill to this if you wanted to. You could also simply modify the color. So if we made our stroke black, we'll make our stroke black. And let's say we wanted to make the text green. I'm questioning because I'm not sure. But on our stroke, we will do just like we did on the rest of our pumpkin. We'll click on stroke. We will expand it so we can see our stroke there. And then we'll go over to effects and we'll select outline. We'll click on our color block. We will grab that dropper to pull the green color that we need. Click the circle to fill it. Expand the radius. And so now you've got another option for text. You could put welcome. You could put happy fall, y'all. Welcome, and then personalize it. You could also just put middle initials in here. So if we did just a C, you could make that nice and big and center that. You could literally set this up like this and sell an entire monogram alphabet that's each individual letter on a doodle pumpkin like this. That's a design that people can buy. I might actually do that. So you have those options there. You could even create like a wood board to go across it and use the same steps that we did for the stem. Well, basically for everything, you know, create a rectangle, add your stroke, add your outline, add your accent lines in a slightly lighter or darker color, and then you could have a board across your pumpkin, or you could turn that board into a little sign that sticks out of the top of your pumpkin that says welcome, and you could put the name on here. You can use any types of fonts that you want to personalize this for different uses or make it generic. Now, you can use this, as I've been saying, in so many different ways. You can even go back through and you can change the colors. So you could have a series of different colors for your pumpkins. You can go to resources like creativefabrica.com. I might have that pulled up. Okay, yeah. You can go to resources like creativefabrica.com and look for different types of digital paper to use as backgrounds. And that is great for doing full color garden flags. Or if you wanted to do full bleed tumblers and do the monogram initial or people's names, I just entered in a search for Doodle digital paper because that does kind of fit that theme, but you can also just do fall digital paper. And you'll see there's a lot to choose from and play around with. One of the reasons why I love the Creative Fabrica membership is because of all the digital papers. And I just come here and sometimes I need to try 5 or 6 different little bundles here before I find one that I like. And it's definitely better to do this in a bundle like this with the membership where you have unlimited downloading than it is to be on Etsy spending $20 on digital papers just to find one that you like, which is exactly what I used to do before I got the Creative Fabrica membership. So it saves a lot of money. To me, it's totally worth it. I can't recommend it enough. This is the only membership that I have. I know that like Hungry JPEG and Font Bundles and Design Bundles, I know that they have it as well, but a lot of sellers sell on all platforms, so you're not usually missing anything. But anyways, so I love coming here for the digital papers, and you can even choose some fonts if you wanted to find some cute like fall type fonts. You could see if there were any that of the dingbat fonts that had like little ornaments like spider webs or something that you could add to your popcorn. Oh, see, here's one for Halloween dingbats right now. And you can keep working on your design and adding different things to it that way. You could create doodle faces and add to it. And, you know, if you're looking for ideas, you can always go to places like Etsy or Pinterest and type in, you know, doodle pumpkin flag, doodle pumpkin door hanger. And you can get some cute ideas for things that are going on. It's important to remember you should never copy someone else's work. But I do find, and most designers find, that you can definitely get some inspiration about ideas that you might want to put together for yourself. And this is just a great way to do it, is to kind of see what's out there and pull some ideas from that. I mean, this one shows cheetah print. People love cheetah print. I almost said everyone, but I do not like it. Leopard print, I mean. But you could add different patterns in there. you know, all you would do is add your patterns into that base ellipse that we created, or your leaf or your stem. So, oops, I moved that one. So you have a lot of options for what you can do with your file. And if you want to be able to go back and make additional changes and change the colors or change the text, then you want to make sure you save your working file. You do this by going to File and then Save As. This will save your source file or your Affinity Designer formatted file. So we can just save that as Doodle Pumpkin. And if you want to export this specifically, so I can take the C off, for example, you want to click and drag to select everything that's there because we have dead space. If our pumpkin filled the side space as well, or if we changed our document space, then we wouldn't need to click and drag. The main thing is you want to try and have the least amount of dead space on the perimeter of your design. So you can click and drag for something like this and you see it's got sharp to those edges, which is what we want. And then go to File and Export and choose PNG. And from your drop-down menu, select Selection Only if you have selected it like that, and then hit Export. And that will export your flattened PNG. So your source file, this one that we saved, when we went to File and then Save As, that's your source file, your working document, whatever you want to call that. That's where you can come in and make changes. Maybe you want to move something, add different text, change the colors, add patterns. You can do all of that in your working file, and then you export as your flattened PNG. If I hit Place Image here and we pull that one back in, so that you have this flattened PNG. See, it's one layer, and that's the one that you can import into programs to trace if you're using a laser cutter or print and cut vinyl. And this is the one that you will probably use if you were going to sell or use on different types of graphics. So that is our tutorial on how to create a doodle pumpkin design. It's definitely within mind with the door hangers. And as fall is coming up, if you happen to get a pumpkin cutout somewhere, you can follow all of these same steps to make the design, but make it fit your pumpkin template that you have. And then you have a cool original design that you have created that you can edit how you want and use how you want, sell how you want without limitations. So if you guys enjoyed this Affinity Designer tutorial, be sure to sign up for the masterclass. If you click on the hashtag in our group, hashtag ADMC, you will see all of the rave reviews that we've had coming in so far. And really, the class is incredible. It's super in depth. It's a lot more in depth than our free videos are. Instead of me just walking you through these steps, I actually cover all of the tools, all of the context toolbar options, all of the ways that you can manipulate things. Everything is very immersive. It's perfect for beginners because everything is so incredibly detailed and one lesson builds on the next. So you're not skipping around with skills, you're actually learning how to build on each skill as you go. So if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. Other than that, I look forward to seeing your doodle pumpkin, and I hope that if you do follow this video and make one or make a design with one that you come up with, I hope that you will share it and sub that because we would love to see what you gained from this video. Have a great rest of your night, and we will see you again next time.